Imagine you're walking through a dense forest nearly 100,000 years ago. The air is silent until it isn't. A twig snaps behind you. Your heart races. It could be a hungry cave lion, a pack of wolves, or something even more dangerous, another human. In today's world, if you're in danger, you can lock your door, call for help, or rely on protective equipment. But for most of human history, there were no police, no hospitals, and certainly no bulletproof vests. Your body was your only defense. Or was it? At some point in our distant past, humans made a revolutionary decision. Instead of simply becoming stronger or faster, they decided to build something that could take the blow for them. That invention would eventually become armor. From animal hides and woven grass to shining suits of steel, armor changed warfare, hunting, and even the rise of civilizations. But here's the question most people never ask. Who actually invented armor? Was it an ancient king preparing for war? A blacksmith searching for fame? Or did armor begin long before metal was ever discovered? The answer is far older and far more surprising than most people imagine. To uncover the truth, we have to travel back to a time before kingdoms, before cities, before writing itself existed. A time when survival depended on every decision you made. Long before humans forged iron or hammered bronze, life was unbelievably dangerous. Every day was a struggle against nature. Gigantic predators roamed the landscape. Lions larger than those alive today stalked open grasslands. Massive bears could tear apart trees with their claws. Hyenas weren't scavengers waiting for leftovers. They were powerful hunters capable of crushing bones with astonishing force. And humans weren't the strongest animals. They weren't the fastest. They didn't have sharp claws or thick fur. Compared to the creatures around them, early humans looked surprisingly vulnerable. Yet somehow, they survived. Not because they were physically superior, but because they learned something no other species had mastered: preparation. Instead of evolving tougher skin like a rhinoceros or growing a shell like a turtle, humans began creating protection with their minds. The earliest evidence suggests our ancestors first used animal skins simply to stay warm, but warmth wasn't the only benefit. A thick hide could soften scratches from thorn bushes. It reduced cuts while climbing a rocky terrain. It even offered some protection against animal bites. At first, this was probably an accidental discovery. Imagine wearing the hide of a recently hunted animal during winter. Then one day, while pushing through dense bushes or escaping an attacking wolf, you realize something remarkable. The thick skin absorbed the impact instead of your own body. That simple observation may have changed human history forever, because once people realized clothing could protect them, the next question became obvious. Could we make it even stronger? This idea marked one of humanity's earliest technological revolutions. Protection was no longer something nature gave you. It was something you could build. Early hunters likely wrapped extra layers of hide around their chests, shoulders, and forearms, the parts most likely to be injured during close encounters with dangerous animals. Some groups may have stuffed dried grass or soft fur between layers of leather to cushion heavy blows. Others strengthened hides by drying them over fire, making the material tougher and more resistant to tearing. These weren't uniforms. They weren't designed to look impressive. They were survival tools. Every improvement meant a slightly better chance of returning home alive, and in prehistoric times, a tiny advantage often meant the difference between life and death. But as humans became smarter, they also became more dangerous to one another. Conflicts between rival groups increased. Spears became sharper. Stone axes became deadlier. Simple leather protection that worked against claws and teeth suddenly faced weapons designed by human intelligence. Animal hides alone were no longer enough. Humanity needed something stronger, and that need would begin one of the greatest tech. As dangerous as wild animals were, they weren't the only threat early humans had to face. Over thousands of years, hunting became more advanced. Spears flew farther, stone blades became sharper, Tribes competed over hunting grounds, fresh water, and safe shelters. What had once been an occasional fight could now become a deadly confrontation. Nature had created the danger, but human intelligence had made it even more lethal. The old animal hide cloaks that protected against scratches and bites were no longer enough. A well-thrown spear could pierce straight through untreated leather. Stone axes could split bones with terrifying force. If humans wanted to survive, they had to invent something entirely new. Not better weapons, better protection. This is where the story of true armor begins. Instead of wearing a single animal skin, people started experimenting with layers. Several thin hides stitched together were much stronger than one thick hide. Air trapped between the layers acted like a cushion, helping absorb the force of a strike. The idea seems simple today, but it was an extraordinary engineering breakthrough for prehistoric people. They had discovered that the way materials were combined could matter just as much as the material itself. Different regions of the world inspired different solutions. In heavily forested areas, flexible strips of tree bark were softened in water, then woven together to create protective chest coverings. Some types of bark were surprisingly durable and could absorb impacts without shattering. In grasslands, people braided reeds and plant fibers into thick padded garments. While these couldn't stop a spearhead completely, they reduced cuts and bruises and offered valuable protection during close combat. Animal bones also found a new purpose. Small bone plates were drilled with primitive stone tools and tied onto leather clothing using sinew or rawhide cords. These overlapping pieces worked much like the scales of a fish. Each plate protected the one beneath it while allowing the wearer to move. It wasn't beautiful, it wasn't comfortable, but it worked. Around the world, early communities arrived at similar ideas without ever meeting each other. They all faced the same problem. How do you protect a fragile human body without making it impossible to run, climb, hunt, or fight? The answer was balance. Too much protection made you slow. Too little protection left you. Finding the perfect balance became one of humanity's greatest design challenges. Some of the earliest organized armies, particularly in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, began wearing reinforced leather armor strengthened with metal studs or overlapping plates. Archaeological discoveries suggest that by around 3000 BCE, soldiers were already experimenting with armor designed specifically for battle rather than everyday survival. This was a major turning point. Armor was no longer just something an individual crafted for personal safety. It had become military technology. Kings began equipping their best warriors with the finest protection available. Skilled craftsmen devoted years to perfecting armor, constantly searching for lighter, stronger, and more flexible designs. For the first time in history, a warrior's survival often depended not only on courage or skill, but also on the quality of the armor they wore. Then another discovery changed everything. Humans learned to melt metal. At first, it seemed like a way to make better tools, but someone eventually asked a revolutionary question. What if we wore the metal instead? That single idea would transform armor forever. The age of bronze had arrived, and with it came a new generation of warriors whose bodies were protected by shining metal, unlike anything the world had ever seen. For thousands of years, humans relied on leather, bark, woven fibers, and bone to protect themselves. These materials were clever, but they all shared one weakness. They wore out. A spear could pierce them, an axe could split them, a sword could slice through them. As civilizations grew larger, wars became more frequent and more organized. Villages turned into cities, cities became kingdoms, and kingdoms fought to control fertile land, rivers, and trade routes. Survival was no longer just about escaping predators, it was about surviving armies. Then, around 3300 BCE, a discovery in the ancient Near East changed history forever. Humans learned to combine copper with tin, creating a new metal that was harder, stronger, and more durable than either metal alone. This alloy became known as bronze. At first, bronze was used to make axes, knives, and farming tools. But it didn't take long before someone realized that the same material could also protect the human body. For the first time, armor wasn't just thick clothing, it became engineered protection. The earliest bronze armor wasn't the shining suit of a medieval knight that many people imagine. Instead, it consisted of small bronze plates carefully attached to leather or cloth. These overlapping pieces acted much like the scales of a fish. If an enemy struck one plate, the force spread across several others instead of hitting the body directly. This design became known as scale armor. It was flexible enough for soldiers to move while offering far better protection than leather alone. Soon after, craftsmen developed lamellar armor, where small bronze plates were tied together with leather cords instead of being sewn onto fabric. This made repairs easier. If one plate broke, it could simply be replaced without rebuilding the entire suit. For ancient armies, this was a revolutionary advantage. The civilizations of Mesopotamia were among the first to equip elite soldiers with bronze armor. These warriors guarded kings, defended city walls, and led armies into battle. To ordinary farmers, a bronze-clad soldier must have looked almost unstoppable. Imagine standing on a dusty battlefield with only a wooden spear, and watching a warrior covered in gleaming metal march toward you beneath the blazing sun. The psychological effect alone was enormous. Armor wasn't just protection, it inspired fear. Ancient Egypt also embraced bronze technology, though their hot climate forced them to adapt. Heavy armor could become deadly under the desert sun. Instead of covering the entire body, Egyptian soldiers often wore lighter bronze chest pieces combined with leather protection. This balance allowed them to remain mobile while surviving long campaigns across scorching landscapes. Different environments demanded different solutions, and that's a pattern we'll see again and again throughout history. Meanwhile, on the island of Crete, the mysterious Minoan civilization produced some of the earliest complete bronze body armor ever discovered. One remarkable example, known today as the Dendra armor, dates to around 1400 BCE. Unlike scale armor, it consisted of large bronze plates covering nearly the entire body. It even included shoulder guards, neck protection, and leg armor. To modern eyes, it almost resembles something from a science fiction movie, yet it was built over 3,400 years ago. It proved that ancient armor makers were far more sophisticated than we often imagine. But bronze had one major weakness: it was expensive. Copper and tin rarely occurred together. Tin, in particular, had to be transported across enormous distances. Entire trade networks developed just to supply bronze workshops. If those trade routes were interrupted by war, famine, or natural disasters, armor production slowed dramatically. Only wealthy kings, nobles, and elite warriors could afford full bronze protection. Most ordinary soldiers still fought wearing leather, woven fabrics, or no armor at all. Bronze armor had become something more than military equipment. It was now a symbol of wealth, status, and political power. As kingdoms competed for resources, another discovery quietly spread across the ancient world: a darker metal, harder, more abundant, cheaper to produce. It didn't shine with the golden color of bronze, but on the battlefield, it would prove far deadlier. That metal was iron, and it would completely transform warfare for the next 2,000 years. The Age of Bronze had shown humanity what armor could become. The Age of Iron would reveal what it was truly capable of. The Bronze Age had transformed warfare. For the first time, soldiers marched into battle protected by gleaming sheets of metal. Kingdoms competed to produce stronger armor, and warriors who wore it often dominated the battlefield. But bronze had one fatal weakness: it depended on two rare metals, copper and tin. If either became scarce, armor production slowed to a crawl. Entire armies could be weakened simply because trade routes were cut off. Humanity needed a stronger, cheaper alternative. The answer had been buried beneath their feet all along: iron. Unlike tin, iron ore existed almost everywhere. Mountains, hills, and riverbeds across Europe, Asia, and Africa contained vast deposits waiting to be discovered. There was only one problem. Iron was incredibly difficult to work with. Bronze melted at relatively low temperatures, making it easy for ancient metalworkers to cast into molds. Iron refused to cooperate. It required furnaces far hotter than anything most civilizations had ever built. For centuries, people saw iron as little more than strange rocks hidden inside stone. Then, sometime around 1200 BCE, skilled blacksmiths unlocked its secret. They learned how to heat iron until it became soft enough to hammer into shape. Instead of pouring molten metal into molds, they repeatedly heated, hammered, folded, and shaped it by hand. Every strike of the hammer forced tiny imperfections out of the metal. Slowly, a stronger material emerged. This wasn't just manufacturing, it was craftsmanship. Each piece of armor demanded patience, precision, and incredible skill. Soon, iron armor began replacing bronze across much of the ancient world. It wasn't because iron was always stronger. Early iron was often softer than high-quality bronze. Its real advantage was abundance. Iron could be mined almost anywhere. That meant more armor, more weapons, more soldiers. For the first time, ordinary warriors, not just wealthy nobles, could wear metal protection. War was changing forever. No civilization demonstrated the power of iron armor better than the Assyrian Empire. Between the 9th and 7th centuries BCE, the Assyrians built one of history's most feared military machines. Their armies were disciplined, highly organized, and exceptionally well equipped. Assyrian soldiers wore iron helmets, reinforced scale armor, and carried large shields that protected entire formations. Combined with powerful siege engines and skilled archers, they became nearly unstoppable. When neighboring kingdoms saw an Assyrian army approaching, many surrendered before the battle even began. Armor had become psychological warfare. A wall of armored soldiers didn't simply protect itself, it intimidated the enemy before the fighting even started. Far to the west, another civilization was learning the same lesson: the Greeks. Greek hoplites fought in dense formations known as the phalanx. Each soldier carried a massive round shield while wearing bronze or iron helmets and protective chest armor. Standing shoulder to shoulder, thousands of warriors formed an almost unbreakable wall. Every shield protected not only its owner but also the soldier beside him. For the Greeks, armor represented something deeper than survival. It symbolized discipline, trust, unity. One frightened soldier breaking formation could endanger everyone around him. Their armor wasn't simply individual protection, it was part of a carefully designed military system. Then came the civilization that perfected armor like no one before: Rome. Roman blacksmiths constantly experimented with new designs, searching for the ideal balance between protection, mobility, and cost. One of their greatest innovations became known as lorica. Instead of tiny, overlapping scales, it used broad curved strips of iron wrapped around the chest and shoulders. Leather straps connected the plates, allowing surprising flexibility. Compared with older armor, it was easier to repair and provided excellent protection against swords and spears. A Roman legionary wearing lorica segmentata looked unlike any warrior the ancient world had ever seen: disciplined, uniform, professional. Their appearance alone projected the power of an empire, but Roman armor wasn't identical across every battlefield. Soldiers stationed in Britain's cold forests wore different equipment than those guarding Egypt's scorching deserts. Armor evolved to match climate, terrain, and enemy tactics. This adaptability became one of Rome's greatest strengths. The empire didn't just build better armor, it constantly improved it. As centuries passed, blacksmiths discovered new techniques. Iron could be heated repeatedly, folded, hammered thinner, strengthened. Eventually, craftsmen learned to control the amount of carbon mixed into the iron. The result was something extraordinary: steel, harder than iron, more durable than bronze, capable of holding its shape under devastating impacts. It would become the foundation of the most famous armor in history: the shining suits worn by medieval knights, But those magnificent creations didn't appear overnight. They were the result of thousands of years of human experimentation. Every stitched animal hide, every woven bark vest, every bronze scale, every hammered iron plate had led to this moment. Armor wasn't invented by one person. It evolved through countless generations of hunters, warriors, blacksmiths, and craftsmen, each solving the problems left by those who came before. And as armor reached its greatest heights, a new invention was quietly emerging, one that would make even the strongest steel seem almost useless: gunpowder, the weapon that would change warfare forever. By the time the Middle Ages arrived, armor had reached its greatest masterpiece. The simple animal hides of prehistoric hunters had evolved into magnificent suits of polished steel. For nearly 3,000 years, humanity had been locked in an endless contest. Every time someone invented a deadlier weapon, someone else invented stronger armor. It was a race that never seemed to end. A sharper sword led to a thicker breastplate. A heavier axe inspired stronger helmets. More powerful arrows produced better shields. For centuries, neither side truly won. Weapons improved, armor improved, the balance remained. Then everything changed. Not because of a better sword, not because of a stronger shield, but because of an invention that arrived with a thunderous explosion: gunpowder. Gunpowder was first developed in China during the 9th century. Ironically, Chinese alchemists weren't trying to invent a weapon. They were searching for an elixir of immortality. Instead, they accidentally created one of the deadliest military technologies in history. At first, gunpowder powered fireworks and simple explosive devices. Then came fire lances, primitive hand cannons, and eventually, firearms. When these weapons spread across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, they completely transformed warfare. For the first time, a projectile could strike with a force no sword or spear could match. Imagine being a knight in the 1400s. Your armor weighs nearly 30 kilograms. Every plate has been carefully forged by master blacksmiths. You've trained your entire life to fight on horseback. For generations, warriors like you dominated the battlefield. Then an ordinary soldier appears. He isn't stronger than you. He isn't faster. He isn't even wearing expensive armor. He simply raises a crude firearm, pulls the trigger, and your nearly invincible suit of steel is no longer enough. The age of the knight had begun to fade. Armor makers refused to surrender without a fight. Instead, they adapted. Steel breastplates became thicker. Helmets became heavier. Some armor was even tested by firing a pistol directly into it. If the bullet failed to penetrate, the dent was intentionally left visible. This mark became known as a proof mark, showing buyers that the armor had survived a real gunshot. It was the medieval equivalent of a safety certification. But there was a problem. Every improvement made armor heavier. Some suits became so cumbersome that soldiers struggled to move freely. A warrior protected from bullets was of little use if he couldn't run, climb, or fight effectively. The old balance between protection and mobility was breaking apart. As firearms became more powerful, armor became less practical. By the 1600s, many soldiers abandoned full-body armor altogether. Instead, they wore only breastplates and helmets. Eventually, even these disappeared from most armies. The cost of producing heavy armor simply couldn't compete with increasingly powerful guns. For the first time in thousands of years, weapons had finally overtaken armor. It seemed as though humanity's oldest invention had reached its end, but the story wasn't over, not even close. The Industrial Revolution introduced entirely new materials. Steel became stronger, manufacturing became faster. Scientists began studying the physics of impact. Instead of asking, "How do we stop a sword?" they asked, "How do we stop a bullet?" During the First and Second World Wars, soldiers once again wore protective helmets, not to stop rifle rounds, but to shield them from deadly shrapnel. Modern warfare had created new dangers, and armor evolved to meet them. Today, the descendants of humanity's first animal hide garments look very different. Police officers wear soft Kevlar vests capable of catching handgun bullets. Soldiers use ceramic plates that can stop high-powered rifle rounds. Bomb disposal experts wear advanced suits designed to absorb explosions. Even astronauts wear protective layers against tiny meteorites traveling faster than bullets. The materials have changed, the science has changed, but the purpose has remained exactly the same: to give fragile human beings a better chance of surviving the dangers around them. Think about that for a moment. From a hunter wrapping a wolf hide around his shoulders to a modern soldier wearing ceramic composite armor, the goal has never changed. Humans have always understood one simple truth: if we cannot make our bodies stronger, we can build something stronger to protect them. That single idea has followed us for tens of thousands of years, and it continues to evolve even today. So, who invented armor? The answer is both simple and extraordinary. No king, no famous inventor, no single civilization. Armor wasn't created in one place or at one moment in history. It was invented by humanity itself. It began with prehistoric hunters who discovered that animal hides could soften a dangerous blow. It evolved through countless generations of craftsmen, warriors, and blacksmiths who experimented with leather, bark, bone, bronze, iron, and steel. Every generation faced new dangers. Every generation found new solutions. Armor is more than a piece of military equipment. It is a symbol of one of humanity's greatest strengths: our ability to adapt. We don't have claws like lions. We don't have shells like turtles. We don't have the speed of a cheetah. Instead, we use intelligence to overcome our weaknesses. That is the real story of armor, not just the story of metal, but the story of human ingenuity. And in many ways, that story is still being written. Because somewhere, right now, engineers are designing the next generation of protective technology, continuing a journey that began thousands of years ago with nothing more than an animal hide draped across a hunter's shoulders. If you enjoyed this journey into humanity's past, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Knowledge Edu, and turn on notifications. Which ancient invention should we explore next? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next documentary.